Congratulations, Bob, on putting together such a wonderful program and bringing so many people here to Ryerson. I always think in a room like this, it's a group of very special people. Many of you have been at this hydrogen business a lot longer than I, and it takes a particular brand of persistence and dogged determination to stay with this story. Some of you for decades, but it's going to happen. And I have to tell you, in my 6.5 years involved in the hydrogen industry, in the last 12 to 18 months, I've never seen so many encouraging signs that important things are starting to happen to bring the picture together. And so this topic that we're talking about today is a very important topic, a tremendous opportunity here in Ontario and other places in the world to put some things together. Because we're wasting far too much energy. Because we're not thinking right. And I want to bring some points together that I'm sure will be brought to much greater depth throughout the rest of the day, but perhaps it will help to put them together in perspective as we begin. We were very close in 2007, it seemed. The Premier was announcing a hydrogen GO train, and there seemed to be political will and commitment, and the moonshot goal that before the end of the Premier's term, there would be a train on the tracks. Well, what happened? Was it a technology issue? Was it the political will wasn't quite strong enough? Was there a money problem? I don't think so. There are lots of factors that we're going to talk about throughout today, whether it's the gaseous storage or the fuel cell technology or the infrastructure that will go to support Hydrail. Many, many things to analyze. But I want to suggest to you this morning that analysis is actually the problem. And if you go to the website today and look at the electrification plan for the rail corridor here in Ontario, and you'll notice that even tonight, June 11th, there will be a public meeting to discuss this very issue. You'll find lots of analysis. But you won't find any consideration of this problem. That in our society today, looking at the data for North America, we're wasting far too much energy. 55% of the energy that we consume coming from all these siloed sources just simply goes to waste. And the shocking thing is we continue to add renewable generation to this mix. We're actually wasting more. And so the problem is not really technology. The problem is the way we think. Roger Martin is a Dean of Rotman School of Business here in the city of Toronto and the author of some wonderful books. One of them here, The Design of Business. I love the commentary about this. Someone says, you know, there's a lot of companies out there today that have innovation envy. They look at Apple and say, how do they do it? Why can't we get that to happen? We bring in consultants, we try to think creatively and do all that right stuff. Roger Martin says the problem is too much analysis. Too much analytical thinking. All that we get out of analytical thinking is more small, incremental improvements. In another book, Roger Martin talks about integrative thinking. You see, integrative thinkers see more and do more because they include far more in their view as they try to solve a problem. And they look at more relationships between more things and see the whole. And then start to look at the interactions and resolve the tensions between the various issues that they face with a much wider angle lens. And so in this opening talk this morning, I want to talk about some of those things from a broader perspective because the vision here is compelling. I don't need to tell most of you this. What if we had trains that ran more frequently and carried more people and ran on what would otherwise be wasted energy, eliminating 100% of the local emissions and running at 2.5 times the efficiency of the current infrastructure? What if there was no need for a capillary system and the trains were so quiet on the track that you could barely hear them coming? What if they required a whole lot less space but fueled in the same time as diesel trains and cost a whole lot less and moved a whole lot more people? As I was checking the presentation with one of my staff in Germany, he said, what if we just had trains? Of course, Europe's a lot further along than we are when it comes to trains. And so I want to put a few things together for you this morning as I look at some of the things we've been learning about hydrogen infrastructure around the world. Because when you put together high penetration renewable energy, power to gas energy storage technology, along with the electrification of rail systems, you have now the possibility of integrative thinking involving energy and transportation together. This image was jointly developed with ourselves and Enbridge, our partner in power-to-gas technology in North America. It looks at the siloed system we have for energy here today in North America, where 35% of our energy comes from natural gas, and we use it almost exclusively to heat our homes and to fuel industry. 36% for transportation fuel and 19% for electricity. And these three segments of energy basically have very little to do with each other. What's interesting is that we introduce hydrogen technology into the mix. We start to have the ability to cross the boundaries of these silos and bring out a whole lot more value from the infrastructure and the systems that we've already built and paid for. And I don't need to tell you that governments today, not just here but around the world, are drowning in debt and struggling financially. This is not the time to be wasting energy, let alone money. And if we can bring together the siloed system of energy that we use in our society and cross some of these lines and boundaries, we'll be much better off, and it'll cost us a lot less. So, a little bit of a case study. This is data from an area in Germany which has got a lot of wind generation. In fact, that fluctuating blue line there, you can see almost 4 times more energy coming from the wind generation locally than the red line, which is the demand curve. Now, who would be so foolish as to generate so much extra energy as that when they don't really need it? But in fact, in Germany, they're doing it on purpose. On the left-hand side of this slide, you can see in the appropriately brown color the fossil fuel generation of the present situation. On the right-hand side, the vision for the future involving wind and solar, and a very much smaller portion of the brown stuff. On the bottom charts, you can see the plan is to move from 80% fossil generation to 80% renewable energy. Now, this is a big step change. Just a few years ago, when I went to Europe, they were talking about their target of having 20% renewable generation by the year 2020. They're not talking that plenty anymore. The discussion now is for 100%, or at least 80% in the near term. How can they talk that way? Why are they thinking that way? It's because they're using integrative thinking. Something that we can do also here in Ontario, because actually we have the same problem. Today in Ontario, we generate 50% of the time surplus energy to our requirements, amounting to 8 terawatt hours a year. For those of you who haven't seen this kind of demand distribution curve, the S-curve moving through the center of the page here is the Ontario demand curve. In peak hours, the first 10% of that line on the left-hand side, we're using in excess of 19,000 megawatt hours. And then on down through the slope until you reach the center, where we're actually generating more energy than we need. We have a large nuclear generation capacity, as you know, 12,000 megawatts of nuclear capacity. On top of that, 2,500 megawatts of must-run hydro. We can't turn the rivers off. And we've added recently to that just 1,500 megawatts of wind on average, soon to be 6,000 megawatts of wind. If we're drowning in surplus now, we're about to have a whole lot more. This energy goes to Michigan and New York State on a trading program with zero or previously negative pricing. I think that's been somehow outlawed. I'm not sure how they did that. But we're drowning in surplus here in Ontario in electrical energy. And so there's a crying need to introduce large-scale energy storage technology, and that's one of the first themes that I want to talk to you about this morning. This is an area where we're seeing tremendous traction for hydrogen technology around the world, but especially in Germany. What we're doing here is taking surplus electrical energy and moving it through an electrolyzer. Now, you may not know that we have a very esteemed person with us this morning, Mr. Sandy Stewart, sitting over here, the founder of the Stewart Energy Corporation, one of the companies that Hydrogenics purchased some time ago. And back in 1950s, the idea of doing this thing, we're talking about back to the future here, was conceived and discussed, Sandy and his father, taking surplus electricity from Niagara Falls, converting it to hydrogen so it could be stored and used for other purposes at other times. This is not a new idea. What's happened is we're actually doing it today at large scale. So taking these surpluses of electrical energy through an electrolyzer, we now have the ability to move that energy in space and time, in some cases, in some projects, in the natural gas pipeline. And so just in March of this year, our first major project in Germany went online, producing hydrogen and putting it in the natural gas pipeline. But that hydrogen could just as easily be fueling vehicles, be they cars or trains or other types of mobility applications. This energy storage using hydrogen introduces a whole new world of banking energy that we've never had in our electrical systems before. And it happens that the capacity for storing energy among all of the different technologies that you've heard about, sometimes known as the holy grail of energy technologies, energy storage, hydrogen by far out-trumps them all when it comes to the capacity for large-scale energy storage. Much higher than pumped hydro or compressed air storage, and certainly many orders of magnitude higher in capacity than battery technology. I like to use this image to illustrate the point. The most often talked about bulk energy storage technologies today are compressed air storage and pumped hydro. On this slide, we compare the three technologies, showing that hydrogen technology has the ability to store 100 times more energy than a similar volumetric capacity in compressed air storage. 100 times more storage capacity. On the backdrop of this slide, you have the fluctuating wind output data from 2008 in Germany by E.ON, one of the largest utilities in the world. The need for storage is the area under this curve, under the spiky chart. A compressed air storage facility is pictured on the right-hand side of the slide, and the amount of energy that's stored there at 500 megawatt-hours of capacity is shown in the small red box in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide. It pales in comparison to the need. If we take that same volumetric capacity, instead of compressing air into the ground, we put hydrogen in the same volume at the same pressure, we store 100 times more energy. And so in Germany today, there's a recognition that hydrogen is a critical part of the story. Indeed, 18 projects have been announced for large-scale hydrogen energy storage. It's not possible for you to show me anywhere in the world any other technology with 18 projects on the go. This indeed is a major breakthrough for the field of hydrogen technology, and I think the leading application. In my time in this field, I've never seen the pull on our company or on hydrogen technology that I'm seeing here. Out of the 18 projects, Hydrogenics, the small Canadian company in Mississauga, has won 7. And the first of those went into operation in Falkenhagen, Germany, just March of this year. Being able to attract the attention of E.ON, the largest utility in the world, and Enbridge, the major natural gas distributor and owner of major renewable generation assets here in Canada, to work with us on the deployment of commercial application of hydrogen storage technology. I'm going to come back to this point near the end because I think it's very important in the emergence of new technology, getting the attention of major giants like this and their willingness to work and bring their credibility to the story is a very critical point. And I believe that there's people here attending this conference who have the influence and the leadership who can accelerate this field in ways far beyond what they can believe if they'll do the things that are required in getting us started. And so you see here in the snow in Falkenhagen, Germany, the site of the first 2 megawatt hydrogen energy storage project using Hydrogenics electrolyzers. Just produced the first hydrogen in March of this year. And that hydrogen is being injected into the natural gas pipeline, opening up a vast storage and transportation facility to move energy in Germany generated primarily from wind in the Falkenhagen area.
Who delivered the technique? Siemens? Or?
So Hydrogenics, our company.
You
Yes, yeah, we are the global leader in electrolysis technology and leading Siemens by far. I'm proud to say. One of the things we're often asked about is the economics of doing this, and we've, with the help of Rob Harvey, one of my colleagues who's joined me here today, and you're welcome to talk to Rob throughout the day. And by the way, we have tours set up for Hydrogenics later tomorrow. You're welcome to come and visit us and see some of this technology. We're often asked about the economics, and so Rob did a great job of compressing the economics into a very short 101 course on one slide. I'll go through this very quickly. If you take a 100 megawatt wind farm, generating 245,000 megawatt hours of energy at a 29% capacity factor over the course of a year, just 58,000 of those 245,000 megawatt hours will actually land in the period when we need and want the energy. Now, this is one of the things that the detractors of renewable generation are very happy to point out. That all this wind stuff we're doing is kind of useless because we're getting all this energy when we don't really need it. And that's another example of analytical thinking. If we complement the wind project with the ability of storing just 32 megawatts of power-to-gas technology, at a cost of another $35 million, we double the amount of energy that falls within the target high demand period. So we go from 58,000 megawatts to another 58,000 megawatts that's coming to us when we want it and where we want it. And it makes commercial and financial sense. As we're talking to the Ontario Ministry of Energy and the Ontario government about moving ahead with this technology here, we're not asking for feed-in tariffs. We're not asking to spend a whole lot more money to green the energy system in some special way that needs special incentives. If we merely collect the value of doing this and concentrate that value in some way that this kind of resource can be contracted properly, we unlock the value of $12.5 million savings a year over the 20-year life of the project, $250 million of savings on a $35 million investment. Hands up, who wants to invest? So, what we're talking about here works economically. Let me explain it in a little bit more detail. What we're doing is tapping into any particular source of renewable generation, solar, wind, run-of-the-river hydro, it doesn't much matter, and we're taking the surpluses of energy that arrive at times that we don't need that energy immediately and converting that through the electrolysis process into hydrogen gas. That hydrogen gas now becomes a resource which can move back into dispatchable generation of power through combined cycle gas plants, into fuels for vehicles or trains, or into low carbon heat as we green the gas system with zero carbon gaseous energy. So one of the attractive attributes of power-to-gas technology is the fact that we can flexibly dispatch or move that energy into various other energy vectors as we need them. The ability now to integrate renewable generation at a much higher level is opened up by having large-scale storage technology. And this is why in Germany the discussion has moved from 20% renewables by 2020 to a goal of 100% ultimately, or 80% by 2050. Because large-scale energy storage technology allows us to have continuous supply of energy and overcome the problem of intermittency. And it gives us the options of having seasonal storage. Here in Ontario, our excesses come particularly in the spring and the fall when it's especially windy. And so we have the ability to move that power, say from April to August when it's air conditioning season and we need that energy. And this is what attracted Enbridge to work with us, because Enbridge is used to dispatching seasonal storage of energy with their large-scale gas assets in the Sarnia area of the province. We also now have the ability of dispatching renewable energy. Today, the independent electricity system operator here in Ontario is struggling with the integration of renewables because of the dispatchability problem with renewables. And so this kind of large-scale storage technology opens up the ability to have a dispatchable energy resource. We're doing this today. It's not a concept. As we're going to hear about many of the train projects later in the day, we're doing it today. The technology is not a problem. It's on the ground. It's working. And as we move through the next phases, we've developed technology which we're very happy to show you in our facilities in Mississauga tomorrow. A megawatt PEM electrolyzer, the world's first. It's the size of a bar fridge. It can soak in a megawatt of electrical energy, turn it into 500 kilograms of hydrogen a day, more than enough to run a good few trains. And move that energy from the electrical system into the transportation system, crossing over those silo boundaries that we were talking about earlier. I'll Already we've drafted up plans for a 40 megawatt plant and have discussions with potential customers over that. And so this is moving very quickly to very large scale. And those of you who've been working more on the train side of this technology need to be aware that the fuel side of the story is perhaps moving more quickly than you knew. On the left-hand side, with the backdrop of the shadow of man standing behind it, you see the megawatt PEM electrolyzer that has just been announced in the last months, and our first sale to E.ON, the largest utility in the world for energy storage in Germany. First of its kind in the world. On the right-hand side, fuel cell technology. Also moving very rapidly, and one of the major impediments, high costs, has been overcome with more than 85% cost reduction in our company in just the last 5 years. Fueling is not a problem. Fueling systems is not what's stopping us on this story. Hydrogenics has built 45 hydrogen fueling projects around the world, and the pace of hydrogen fueling is picking up. 6 stations in the last 18 months in various places around the world. So fueling's not a problem. It's not fueling that's stopping us. Here's the largest hydrogen fueling station in Europe in the city of Hamburg, built with hydrogenics technologies, electrolyzers on site, splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, fueling buses and cars, 270 kilograms a day of hydrogen generated on that site. Fuel cell technology is especially well suited to this particular application because of its energy intensity and energy density. I won't get into the science here deeply. This is a Ragone chart. It shows the specific energy density of various energy storage technologies. You can see that the green line, the signature of the fuel cell, is dramatically different than battery technology. And the performance from a weight to energy density point of view, far higher with fuel cell technology than battery technology. And it's this unique signature that suits fuel cell technology very appropriately for rail applications. And we've been doing this on large mobility applications around the world. Some of these where human life is dependent on the system. On the top right-hand side, an aircraft that will soon be the first to cross the Atlantic on pure hydrogen power. We're even putting it together for NASA, for the moon. And then boring buses too. So, there's not a problem with the propulsion technology to do what we're talking about today. We're already doing it. And here, picture our 100 kilowatt fuel cell power module. It's about half the size of a fridge, I guess, to give you some perspective. 100 kilowatts continuous power. Racking these together into megawatt blocks or larger for rail applications is no problem whatsoever. You can come and see one tomorrow afternoon. Integration is not what's stopping us. We've already put together the plans, working with rail partners to show how fuel cell storage and hydrogen technology can go together in the space that's available, in the power levels that are required. Integration is not what's stopping us. And in fact, we've already delivered projects to do this. This is not a problem of system design. This particular application in rail is very unique and very appropriate for hybridization of various electrified technologies to come together, recovery of regenerative braking energy through this cyclical pattern of commuter stops, etc. There's no problem putting the design together for this kind of application. What's stopping us is the lack of integrative thinking. Of putting these pieces together and seeing a wider array of problems that need to be solved, and putting our minds and creativity to a bigger picture than the narrowness of just simply electrifying stuff the same way that's been done all over the world for decades in the past. There are many, many examples of electrified railways, but unfortunately here in Ontario, we're talking about what everybody else has done, and using the consultants that everybody else is using, and using the analytical thinking that everyone else has used for so many decades to just simply replicate what somebody else has done. And here in this room is the creativity, the energy, and the capability to deliver a whole other type of solution with integrative thinking. As Roger Martin points out in his book, too often we're obsessed with reliability and not thinking enough about the validity of carrying on the way things have been done in the past. So, what's stopping us? A lack of integrative thinking, and it takes time to scale some of these things. We're trying to overcome technologies that have been around for 100 years. This slide from Shell Oil is very helpful in pointing out the evolution of energy technologies. You can see on the chart with, I think, the yellow line and the green line that just in recent years, the solar and wind energy vectors have moved into the level of materiality in terms of how many terajoules of energy are being generated around the world from these sources. So in our lifetime, we're seeing some of these technologies break through to become material and important contributors to our energy systems. And the same is true, we have to believe, for rail transport using hydrogen. But it hasn't happened yet. We've been here before. Here in the province of Ontario, important new technologies were developed, including the truck carriage system for the GO train that some of you took here today, and the enablement of large double-decker, high-capacity rail carriages. We have the capacity for innovation in Ontario, but we have yet to deploy it on this particular vector, and that's why we're here today to talk about this. What's stopping us? We haven't had yet the leadership that's required to move this agenda into reality. We've been close here in Ontario, but it hasn't happened yet. Folks like Bob and others who carry the torch and keep things going and bring people together to innovate and collaborate are certainly an important part of making this happen. We need some fresh thinking to look at the problem of transport, not just as a transport problem, but also as an energy problem. As my friend John Coburn, formerly with Xenon Environmental, likes to talk about, we need raging reference sites. And I'm looking forward to some of your presentations today, hopefully seeing some reference sites that scream and shout and rage to people to say, it's possible. We need more of those in more places. We need international collaboration. Here in Canada, we have some of the pieces, but not all of them. And so it's great to have some international delegates here at the conference this morning to show us the way of what they've been doing. We need, especially, large OEM partners who have the courage to do something new and different, and not just repeat the analytical thinking of the past. And here in Canada, we do have capable rail technology, both in academia and in industry. And we need those OEMs to become the leaders and bring the credibility and the validity to this application by actually trying it. And finally, we need technology partners and folks with the know-how to put the pieces together, and that's where our company, Hydrogenics, comes into the picture. And I'll be glad to talk to you during the day or as you visit us tomorrow. Thank you very much.